Captain Daniel Porter had seen many strange things in his 20 years of space travel. He had watched stars die and new ones being born. He had walked on moons covered in ice and planets where the rain was made of iron, but nothing had prepared him for what he was seeing now. The exploration vessel Horizon's Edge had just completed a routine hyperspace jump. It was supposed to be simple. They were mapping new systems at the edge of human territory, looking for planets that might support colonies one day. The jump should have taken them to an empty region of space where no human ship had ever been before. Instead, they had arrived in the middle of what looked like the busiest highway in the universe. Ships of every size and shape filled the. Some were small and fast, darting between larger vessels like fish swimming through a coral reef. Others were massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built, moving slowly but with a purpose that suggested great importance. The colors and designs were unlike anything in human records. Some ships looked like they had been grown rather than built. Others seemed to be made of pure light held together by forces that human science could not explain. Lieutenant Laura was the first to speak. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly as she worked the sensor console. "Captain, I am picking up thousands of transmissions. Different frequencies, different languages. There are at least 50 unique communication protocols that I can identify, and probably hundreds more that our systems cannot recognize." Daniel took a deep breath. He had trained for first contact situations. Every captain in the exploration fleet had gone through the simulations, but those simulations had assumed they would meet one alien species, maybe two, not what appeared to be an entire civilization of countless species working together. "Open a channel," he said. "All standard first contact frequencies. Broadcast our peaceful intentions." The response came faster than anyone expected. Within minutes, a large ship had changed course and was heading directly toward them. It was beautiful in a strange way, with curves and angles that seemed to flow into each other like water. The ship was roughly 3 times the size of Horizon's Edge, and its hull shimmered with colors that had no names in any human language. More ships began to gather, dozens at first, then hundreds. They formed a loose sphere around the human vessel, not threatening but clearly curious. Daniel ordered his crew to remain calm and to make no sudden movements. Whatever was about to happen, he wanted humanity's first impression to be one of peaceful intent. The communication screen flickered to life, and Daniel found himself looking at a creature unlike anything he had imagined. It was tall and thin, with a body that resembled an insect but moved with a grace that suggested high intelligence. Its eyes were compound, made of thousands of tiny lenses that reflected the light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice was translated by some technology that Daniel could not see, coming through in flat, emotionless English. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the sovereign territory of the Dominion. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Daniel stood up straight and spoke clearly. "I am Captain Daniel Porter of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We are explorers from a planet called Earth. We come in peace and mean no harm to anyone." There was a long pause. The alien, who later identified himself as Ambassador Al, seemed to be consulting with others off-screen. When he turned back, his compound eyes showed something that might have been surprise or perhaps confusion. "Earth, we have no records of this world or your species. You will submit to scanning and assessment. Do not resist." Blue light washed over the Horizon's Edge. The crew felt nothing, but the sensors showed that they were being examined down to the molecular level. The process took several hours, during which Al asked questions about human history, biology, and technology. Daniel answered as honestly as he could, sensing that any deception would be detected immediately. When the scanning was complete, Al delivered his verdict with the enthusiasm of a clerk filing paperwork. "Your species will be cataloged and assigned a developmental tier. Based on our assessment, you are a Tier 7 civilization. This places you in the category of pre-expansion, technologically adolescent species. You are not a threat and not a significant trading partner. You will be granted observer status and may petition for limited trade rights in approximately 300 of your years. Daniel felt his crew's disappointment like a physical weight. They had traveled across the stars and discovered the greatest revelation in human history, only to be told they were too primitive to matter. 300 years, he asked. Surely there must be some way to speed up the process. Al made a sound that the translator interpreted as mild amusement. The Dominion has existed for 12,000 years. We have encountered many young species who believed they were special, who thought they deserved immediate recognition. You are not unique in this regard. In time, perhaps your descendants will prove worthy of greater consideration. For now, you will be patient. The conversation ended shortly after. Al provided them with basic star charts and instructions for navigating Dominion space without causing diplomatic incidents. He also gave them a warning to stay away from certain regions where more dangerous species lived, species that might not be as patient with primitive newcomers as the were. As the alien ships dispersed and the horizon's edge was left alone in the vastness of space, Daniel gathered his crew for a meeting. They were disappointed and a little angry. They had discovered an entire galactic civilization, and that civilization had looked at them like adults look at children who have wandered into an important meeting. But Daniel had noticed something during the scanning process. He had seen the readings on the alien instruments, the way certain numbers had made the technicians pause and look again. He had seen Al dismiss those readings as equipment errors, but Daniel was not so sure. They underestimated us, he said quietly to Laura as the ship began its journey back to Earth. They looked at our technology and decided we were nothing special, but they did not look closely at us, at what we can survive, at how fast we can learn. Laura nodded slowly. You think they made a mistake? Daniel watched the stars streak past as the ship entered hyperspace. Somewhere out there was an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had seen countless species come and go. They had become comfortable in their power, certain in their superiority. They had no idea what humanity was capable of. I think, Daniel said with a small smile, that the galaxy is about to get very interesting. 3 months after the Horizon's Edge returned to Earth with news of the Dominion, humanity received its first official visitors from the stars. An assessment ship arrived in the solar system with a team of scientists, diplomats, and bureaucrats whose job was to evaluate primitive species and assign them their proper place in the galactic order. High Assessor led the delegation. She was unlike any alien the humans had met before. Her body was made entirely of living crystal, and she moved with a grace that made her seem like she was dancing rather than walking. When she spoke, her voice created harmonics that humans could feel in their chests as much as hear with their ears. She had performed assessments on over 200 species during her career, and she approached this assignment with the same professional detachment she brought to all her work. Admiral Cole met her at the orbital station above Earth. He was an older man with gray hair and the kind of steady calm that came from decades of military service. The United Nations had chosen him to represent humanity because he could not be intimidated, and because he understood that first impressions mattered more than anything else in diplomacy. "Welcome to our solar system," said, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. Studied the gesture with curiosity before mimicking it. Her crystalline fingers were cool to the touch and surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Admiral Cole. I am here to conduct a standard assessment of your species. This process typically takes between 4 and 6 weeks. I trust you will cooperate fully." Smiled, "We have nothing to hide. Ask any questions you like. Go anywhere you want to go. We are an open book." Over the following weeks, and her team examined everything humanity had to offer. They studied human technology, from the massive fusion reactors that powered Earth's cities to the experimental drives that allowed ships to travel faster than light. They analyzed human biology, taking samples and running tests that seemed to confuse them more with each passing day. They observed human society, watching how billions of people from different cultures managed to work together without tearing each other apart. And slowly, the assessment team began to realize that something was very wrong with their initial classification. The first hint came during a tour of a shipyard where humanity's vessels were being constructed. Sensors detected propulsion systems that were outputting power levels far beyond what a Tier 7 civilization should possess. When she pointed this out too, he simply shrugged and explained that human engineers had made some improvements after studying the information Al had provided. "You reverse-engineered our technology?" asked, her crystalline form flickering with colors that suggested alarm. "Some of it," admitted. "The basic principles are not that different from our own research. We just needed a few hints to point us in the right direction." The second hint came during a visit to a military training facility. Observed human soldiers performing exercises that should have been impossible. They operated in extreme heat and bitter cold without protective equipment. They endured levels of physical stress that would kill most species in the Dominion. They healed from injuries at rates that medical team insisted must be errors in their instruments. "Your world," said one evening, reviewing the data with over dinner. "Tell me about it." Considered the question carefully. Earth is what we call a high-gravity world. Our gravity is stronger than the galactic average, which is why our bodies are so dense and resilient. Our atmosphere contains high levels of oxygen, which most species would find corrosive. Our planet has extreme weather, from hurricanes that can flatten cities to earthquakes that reshape continents. And our wildlife is universally dangerous. On Earth, almost everything has evolved to kill or be killed. Was silent for a long moment. "You evolved on a death world." "We do not call it that," said with a slight smile. "We call it home." The third and most troubling hint came near the end of the assessment period. His team had brought samples of SHIELD technology, standard equipment that was considered highly advanced by most standards. They demonstrated it for the human scientists, expecting polite interest and perhaps some questions. 3 days later, a human engineer named Sam Brooks presented with a complete analysis of the technology, including its weaknesses and suggestions for improvement. "This is impossible," said, her harmonics discordant with confusion and something that might have been fear. "This technology took our civilization 800 years to develop. You understood it in 3 days." Sam scratched his head, looking embarrassed. "It is really not that complicated once you understand the underlying principles. I could show you if you want. I think I found a way to increase the efficiency by about 40%. Declined the offer. She had seen enough. On the day before her departure, she requested a private meeting with Admiral Cole. They sat in his office, looking out at the blue curve of Earth below, and spoke more honestly than she had in centuries. "I have been doing this job for a very long time," she said. "I have assessed species that became great powers and species that destroyed themselves before they ever left their home worlds. I thought I knew how to recognize potential when I saw it." "And now?" asked. "Now I am not sure of anything." Its crystalline form pulsed with colors that had no human translation. "By our records, no species has achieved Tier 4 status in under 2,000 years of spacefaring civilization. You have been traveling between stars for less than 400 years, and your capabilities already exceed many Tier 3 civilizations." She paused, her harmonics low and troubled. "My initial classification was wrong, Admiral. I do not know what tier you truly belong to. Perhaps Tier 2, perhaps higher. This will require review at the highest levels of the Dominion." Nodded slowly. "What do you think will happen?" "I do not know," admitted. "The Dominion does not like surprises. We have built our civilization on stability, on predictability, on knowing exactly where everyone stands. You humans represent something we have not encountered in a very long time." "What is that?" Stood to leave, her crystalline body catching the light from Earth below. "Uncertainty. And if there is one thing that frightens ancient civilizations more than anything else, it is not knowing what comes next. Her report was filed within hours of her departure. It was flagged as urgent and sent to the highest levels of the Dominion government. And then, as often happened in a bureaucracy that governed 40,000 worlds, it was lost in the endless flow of information. Other matters demanded attention. Other crises needed resolution. The strange species from the death world called Earth could wait. It was a decision that the Dominion would come to regret. Station was one of the largest trading hubs in the galaxy. It hung in the empty space between star systems like a small moon, its metal skin covered with docking ports and communication arrays, and the lights of 1,000 different species going about their business. Over 50,000 beings lived and worked on the station, buying and selling goods from across the Dominion and beyond. Commander Torres had brought her ship, the Constitution, on a diplomatic and trade mission. Humanity was still officially classified as a Tier 7 civilization, but the Dominion had grudgingly allowed them to establish small trading outposts in neutral territory. It was a first step, nothing more, but understood that even small steps could lead to great journeys. She was meeting with a group of merchants when the attack began. The hegemony had been enemies of the Dominion for thousands of years. They were a warrior culture, proud and aggressive, and they had long resented what they saw as Dominion arrogance. The assault on Station was meant to be a statement, a demonstration that the Dominion was not as invincible as it pretended to be. 30 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were sleek and deadly, painted in the red and black colors of their military caste. Before the station's defenders could react, they had disabled the defense grid and begun landing troops. Watched from a window as soldiers poured into the station. They were large creatures, vaguely reptilian, with armored scales and weapons that glowed with contained energy. They moved with the discipline of veterans, securing corridors and taking prisoners with brutal efficiency. The Dominion garrison fought back, but they were outnumbered and, within an hour, most of the station was under control. 3,000 civilians from dozens of species huddled in shelter zones, waiting to learn their fate. Among those civilians were 47 human Marines from the Constitution. Sergeant First Class Drake gathered his people in a maintenance corridor that they had not yet secured. He was a compact man with quiet eyes and hands that never seemed to shake, no matter how bad things got. He had joined the Marines because he believed in protecting those who could not protect themselves, and right now, there were 3,000 beings who needed protection. "Here is the situation," he said in a low voice. "They have taken most of the station. The Dominion forces are either captured or pinned down. Our ship is outside but cannot dock without getting blown apart. We are on our own." One of his Marines, a young woman named Mills, looked at the schematic of the station on her portable display. "There are over 800 soldiers in here, Sergeant. There are 47 of us." Nodded slowly. "Then we had better not miss." What followed would become legend throughout the galaxy. The humans moved through the station like ghosts. They used the maintenance corridors and ventilation shafts, appearing where the least expected them and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Human reflexes, evolved on a high-gravity world where predators struck without warning, were nearly twice as fast as their enemies. Human endurance, shaped by a planet where survival required constant vigilance, allowed them to fight for hours without rest. They had never faced anything like them. In one corridor, 3 Marines held off 50 soldiers for 20 minutes, killing or wounding most of them before slipping away into the darkness. In another section, a single sniper named Jake Turner eliminated an entire command squad from a position that the tactical officers had declared impossible to reach. In the main cargo bay, a team of 8 Marines rescued 200 hostages and secured them in a defensible position without losing a single person. Admiral, commander of the assault force, received reports of his soldiers dying with increasing confusion and anger. These humans were supposed to be primitives, barely worth noticing. How were they cutting through his forces like a blade through soft fruit? "Find them," he ordered. "Use every soldier you have. I want those humans dead." But the humans would not be found unless they wanted to be found. They struck and retreated, hit and ran, slowly grinding down the numbers while protecting the civilians they had sworn to defend. After 6 hours of fighting, over 800 soldiers were dead or wounded. The humans had not lost a single Marine. Made a decision born of desperation and wounded pride. If he could not kill the humans with soldiers, he would kill them with firepower. He ordered his ships to fire on the station itself, targeting the sections where the humans were believed to be operating. It was a monstrous order. Hundreds of his own soldiers would die along with thousands of civilians, but no longer cared about anything except destroying these impossible humans who had humiliated his forces. The bombardment began. Energy weapons tore into the station's hull, vaporizing metal and flesh alike. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as entire sections were exposed to the vacuum of space. And then the Constitution acted. Commander Torres had been waiting for an opportunity, any opportunity, to help her people. When the ships began firing on the station, she gave an order that her crew would remember for the rest of their lives. All weapons free, target their firing ships. The Constitution was a frigate, small by galactic standards. The fleet consisted of 30 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed. By any reasonable calculation, the human ship should have been destroyed in seconds. The battle lasted 3 minutes. Human point defense systems, designed to protect ships from the asteroid-filled chaos of Earth's solar system, intercepted 94% of incoming fire. Human weapons, refined by generations of engineering excellence, found weak points in shields that they themselves did not know existed. Human targeting computers, processing information at speeds that made technology look like children's toys, coordinated attacks with perfect precision. When it was over, 18 warships were expanding clouds of debris. The remaining 12 were fleeing into hyperspace as fast as their engines could carry them. On the station, the surviving soldiers threw down their weapons and surrendered. They had watched their fleet destroyed by a single enemy vessel. They had watched their comrades fall to an enemy they could not see or catch. They had no fight left in them. When Dominion relief forces arrived several hours later, they found a scene that none of them would ever forget. Human Marines were sharing their food with the civilians they had rescued. Human medics were treating the wounded of all species, including the prisoners. And Commander Torres was calmly filling out an incident report as if the whole thing had been a minor inconvenience. "We were just doing our jobs," she told the Dominion investigators. Across the galaxy, intelligence agencies began pulling old files from storage, assessment reports that had been dismissed, sensor readings that had been labeled as malfunctions. A picture was beginning to emerge, and it was not a comfortable one. The humans were not primitives. They had never been primitives. And for the first time in 12,000 years, the great powers of the galaxy felt something they had almost forgotten existed. Fear. The Grand Council of the Dominion had not met in emergency session for over 300 years. The last time had been during a plague that nearly destroyed a quarter of their civilization. Before that, it had been a war that threatened the very foundations of their empire. These sessions were reserved for moments when the future itself hung in the balance. Now, the council chambers were filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they were discussing a species that most of them had dismissed as irrelevant just 2 years ago. High was ancient even by Dominion standards. His species had been among the founders of the empire, and he had served on the council for longer than most civilizations had existed. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species destroy themselves and others achieve greatness beyond imagination. He thought he understood how the galaxy worked. He was beginning to realize that he understood nothing at all. "Let us review the facts," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. 2 years ago, a human ship accidentally entered our space. They were classified as a Tier 7 civilization, primitive and insignificant. Since then, they have demonstrated technological capabilities that exceed most Tier 3 species. They have defeated a battle group with a single frigate. They have established colonies in 17 star systems. They have reverse-engineered our most advanced technology in days rather than centuries. He paused, looking around the chamber at his fellow. How did we miss this? Intelligence Director slithered forward to present her report. She was a serpentine creature whose coils shifted nervously as she spoke, a sign that what she had to say was deeply troubling. The initial assessment was not entirely wrong, she explained. When we first encountered the humans, their technology was genuinely primitive by our standards. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. Their understanding of basic physics was incomplete. "Then how do you explain what happened at Station?" demanded. "I believe the humans were hiding their true capabilities," said. "They showed us what they wanted us to see, nothing more. They tested our responses, evaluated our strengths and weaknesses, and only revealed their power when it served their purposes." The council chamber fell silent. The idea that a supposedly primitive species had manipulated the greatest empire in the galaxy was almost too disturbing to accept. "There is more," continued. "We have confirmed that humans have made contact with 3 species we have never encountered. They have established trade relationships with civilizations beyond our borders. They are building alliances that do not include us." Closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his years more heavily than ever before. What are they planning? "I do not know, and that is perhaps the most troubling part." His coils tightened with anxiety. "We have always been able to predict the actions of other species. We know what they want, what they fear, what they will do in any given situation. The humans are different. They do not behave according to any pattern we recognize. They are unpredictable." On Earth, Secretary of State Adams was preparing for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. The Dominion had formally requested a summit to discuss humanity's status in the galactic community. After 2 years of being treated as primitives, humans were finally going to sit at the table as equals. President Gregory Hayes reviewed the briefing materials with a mixture of satisfaction and caution. "What do they want from us?" Pulled up a holographic display showing the latest intelligence. "Several things. They want a mutual defense treaty, which would obligate us to help defend Dominion territory in exchange for the same protection. They want technology sharing agreements, which would give them access to our innovations. And most interestingly, they want us to help mediate their border dispute with the hegemony." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "They want us to settle their arguments. 2 years ago, they would not even let us trade with their merchants." "The incident changed everything," explained. "We demonstrated that we are not just strong, we are effective. 47 Marines defeated 800 enemy soldiers. 1 frigate destroyed 18 warships. The Dominion has fought for thousands of years without achieving that kind of success. So they respect us now." Considered the question carefully. "I think it goes deeper than respect. I think they are afraid of us, not because we might attack them, but because they cannot predict what we will do. The Dominion has been the dominant power for so long that they forgot what it feels like to be uncertain. We remind them that the universe is still full of surprises." The summit took place on a neutral station at the edge of human space. Ambassador Al, the same official who had dismissed humanity as insignificant during first contact, led the Dominion delegation. His compound eyes no longer showed contempt. Instead, they reflected something that looked very much like nervous respect. "We propose a new classification for your species," Al announced during the opening ceremony. "You will no longer be bound by the tier system. You will be recognized as a sovereign power with full diplomatic rights and responsibilities." It was everything humanity had wanted: full recognition, equal standing, a seat at the table where the fate of billions was decided. But Hayes noticed that Al was not finished. "In exchange," the ambassador continued, "we ask that you share your knowledge with us, your engineering techniques, your tactical doctrines, your methods of adaptation and innovation. We wish to learn from you." Hayes exchanged glances with his advisors. The Dominion was 12,000 years old. They had technology and resources beyond anything humanity could match, and they were asking to learn from a species they had called primitive 2 years ago. "We accept," Hayes said, "but knowledge flows both ways. You will share with us as we share with you. Partners, not students and teachers." Al's antennae twitched in what the translator identified as agreement. "Partners, yes, this is acceptable." Across the galaxy, other powers were making similar adjustments to their understanding of humanity. The hegemony quietly from contested territories, unwilling to risk another encounter with human forces. The collective of the Ninth Spiral sent their first ambassador to Earth, eager to establish relations before humans became too powerful to approach as equals. The machine consciousness of Sector 7, which had not communicated with organic life in 2,000 years, sent a single message to human space. The message contained only 3 words: "We acknowledge you." In his office on Earth, President Hayes looked out at the stars and allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Humanity had come so far in such a short time, from a single planet to 17 colonies, from unknown primitives to recognized galactic power, from being dismissed to being feared and respected. But Hayes knew that this was not the end. It was barely the beginning. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of current exploration, were mysteries that humanity had not yet imagined, powers that might make the Dominion look like children, challenges that would test everything humans thought they knew about the universe. And Hayes found himself looking forward to meeting them all. 5 years had passed since the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge accidentally jumped into space and changed the course of galactic history. In that time, humanity had transformed from an unknown species on the edge of civilized space to one of the most influential powers in the known galaxy. Admiral Daniel Porter stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, the first human-built dreadnought. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and sensors that represented the combined knowledge of human ingenuity and galactic science. Below him, a joint fleet of human and Dominion vessels prepared for a mission that would have seemed impossible just years before. Ambassador Al joined him at the window. The diplomat had changed since their first meeting. He no longer looked at humans with contempt or confusion. There was something else in his compound eyes now, something that might have been admiration. "The Void Lurkers have been raiding the outer territories for 600 years, Al said. "We sent expedition after expedition to find their base. We lost entire fleets. Thousands of our best soldiers died searching for an enemy that struck without warning and vanished without trace." Daniel nodded. "And you want us to succeed where you failed." "You already have succeeded," Al replied. "Your scout ships found their base in 6 months. Your analysts identified their attack patterns. Your engineers developed countermeasures for their weapons. All that remains is the final assault." The campaign against the Void Lurkers would become legendary in the years that followed. Human tactical innovation, combined with Dominion resources and experience, created a force that the Lurkers had never faced before. The ancient enemy that had plagued the galaxy for centuries was defeated in 11 days. Their base was destroyed, their fleet scattered, and their threat ended once and for all. But for Daniel, the true measure of humanity's place in the galaxy was not found in battles or treaties. It was found in smaller moments that showed how much things had changed. On station, rebuilt and expanded after the attack, a child approached a human trader with wide, curious eyes. The child reached out to touch the trader's arm, fascinated by the strange, smooth skin that was so different from her own scales. "Does it hurt?" the child asked, "having no armor?" The trader smiled gently. "No, little one, we have other protections." In the markets of a dozen worlds, merchants sold goods labeled as authentic human products. Human coffee, grown on farms that had never seen Earth. Human music, playing from speakers in shops and restaurants across the Dominion. Human fashion, adapted for species with different body types but still recognizable in its simplicity and practicality. On Titan Station, in humanity's own territory, Dr. Heather completed her greatest project. She had spent 3 years developing a universal translator that could handle real-time conversion between any known language, eliminating the delays and errors that still plagued galactic communication. Her colleague, a crystalline being named, watched as Heather uploaded the final version to the galactic network. It was available for free, accessible to any species that wanted to use it. "I still do not understand," said, her harmonics colored with genuine confusion. "This technology is worth immense amounts of credits. You could have made your people rich beyond imagination. Why give it away?" Heather leaned back in her chair and considered the question. "We did not come to the stars to get rich. We came because we were curious, because we wanted to know what was out there, who else was looking up at the same sky. Now that we know, we want to be good neighbors. We want to help." "But why?" "Because that is who we are," Heather smiled. "We spent thousands of years fighting each other on our little planet. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. When we finally made it to the stars, we decided that we wanted to do better. We wanted to prove that we could be more than just survivors." Was silent for a long moment. Then her crystalline form pulsed with colors that Heather had learned to recognize as warmth and respect. "I was wrong about your species," said. "When I first assessed you, I saw only your technology, your biology, your military potential. I missed what truly makes you remarkable." "And what is that?" "Your capacity for growth. Not just technological growth, but moral growth. You learn from your mistakes. You try to be better than you were. In 12,000 years, I have met many powerful species. I have met very few good ones." On Earth, President Hayes delivered an address to mark the 5th anniversary of First Contact. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, their holographic images filling the great chamber of the United Nations. "5 years ago, we stumbled into a galaxy that barely noticed our existence," Hayes said. "We were classified, categorized, and dismissed. Today, we stand as partners and allies with civilizations that have existed for—" He paused, looking out at the assembled faces, human and alien alike. "But our greatest achievement is not our technology or our military strength. It is not the treaties we have signed or the battles we have won. Our greatest achievement is this: we have proven that power does not require cruelty. We have shown that strength can be paired with compassion. We have demonstrated that even the voice at the table can change the conversation for the better." In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of any known civilization, ancient sensors detected the ripples of humanity's expansion. These sensors had been placed long ago, before the Dominion existed, before any of the current galactic powers had emerged from their home worlds. They monitored the galaxy with patience that spanned billions of years, waiting for something worth noticing. The intelligences behind these sensors were older than the stars themselves. They had watched countless species rise and fall. They had seen empires that spanned thousands of worlds crumble into dust. They had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations, each one believing itself to be the center of the universe. Most species followed predictable patterns. They grew, they expanded, they encountered others like themselves. They fought or cooperated according to their natures. Eventually, they faded away, replaced by new species who repeated the same cycles. But these humans were different. They had emerged from a death world that should have killed them long before they achieved sentience. They had survived challenges that would have destroyed any normal species. They had reached the stars in a fraction of the time it took most civilizations. And now they were changing the galaxy around them, not through conquest or destruction, but through something far more unusual. They were making friends. The Ancient Ones had not felt curiosity in a billion years. They had thought themselves beyond such simple emotions, evolved past the need for wonder or interest. But as they watched these strange creatures from a small blue planet transform everything they touched, they found something stirring in their vast, cold minds. For the first time in longer than the stars had burned, they wanted to know more. And in the great expanse of space, where the light of 1 trillion suns illuminated the darkness, the next chapter of galactic history was already being written. It would be a story unlike any that had come before.